The V2500 family of engines is designed using the modular principle. The engine is built by assembling 5 standard modules, which can be put together quickly and easily. This video identifies the 5 modules and demonstrates the tooling and procedures used to remove and install them. This video must not be used for maintenance purposes. The official publication, the engine manual, is the authoritative document and must always be referred to where any doubt exists. Modular construction reduces overall maintenance costs and thus the cost of ownership by utilizing the following proven advantages. Maximum life is achieved from each module. Reduced turnaround times for engine repair. Reduced spare engine holdings. Rapid module changes with minimum ground running required. Easier split engine transportation. The engine comprises 5 modules, which are identified by a module number and name. The module numbers are in accordance with the ATA Technical Publication specification. They are Module 3.2, the intermediate module, Module 3.1, the fan module, Module 4.0, the high pressure module, Module 5.0, the low pressure turbine module, and Module 6.0, the gearbox module. The following sequence of events will demonstrate the tooling required and the methods used to remove and replace all these modules. Firstly, the removal and replacement of the fan, Module 3.1. The first step is to remove the fairing and spinner, which allows access to the fan retaining bolts. Remove the spinner retaining bolts and washers, noting carefully and marking the position of any balance weights that may be fitted. The spinner can now be removed using the special tool provided. 24 bolts which secure the curvic coupling are now exposed. To ensure that the fan disc is not damaged by tools when working on these bolts, a hub protector is fitted inside the disc hub. To separate the curvic coupling, all 24 bolts must be removed. A special wrench and locating ring are provided for this purpose and are fitted as shown here. The first step is to loosen all the bolts by 1/4 of a turn to break the torque. Note that this is carried out in the sequence which is shown on the locating ring. Turn the bolts using the special wrench. During this operation, it's necessary to hold the fan to prevent it from turning, but be careful. The leading edge of the fan blades are sharp, so use gloves to protect your hands. On completion, remove the tool locating ring. The next step is to fit 3 alignment pins to the curvic coupling. These pins are used to guide the fan module during removal, and also to guide the module and align the curvic coupling during refitting. This reduces the chances of damaging the curvic coupling. The alignment pins are provided as a set and are fitted in place of 3 of the curvic coupling bolts. 2 lines engraved on the alignment pins, identified F and R, show how far to engage the pin threads. The F line is used for module removal. To fit the alignment pins, select 3 curvic coupling bolts, spaced 120 degrees apart, and remove the bolts one at a time. Substitute them for the alignment pins. Screw the pin in until the engraved line, marked F, is level with the flange face. When all 3 alignment pins are correctly fitted, a further 18 curvic coupling bolts can be removed. The fan module is now retained by only 3 bolts, these being the 3 bolts located next to the alignment pins. On completion, remove the hub protector. The lifting equipment is made up from a sling adapter and a cantilever sling. These must now be assembled as seen here. After assembly, the complete sling must be hoisted and rotated to the vertical position. When the sling is in the vertical position, the center of gravity of the sling must be checked by looking at the position of the witness mark and adjusted if necessary using the adjusting handle provided. The witness mark for the center of gravity for lifting the sling only is S1. The sling can now be moved into position. It's attached to the fan module using the 12 attaching bolts provided on the sling. Before transferring the weight of the module to the workshop hoist, it's necessary to adjust the center of gravity of the sling to the S2 witness mark. The weight of the module is now transferred to the hoist. The last 3 curvic coupling bolts are removed, and after a final check for clearance all round, the fan module can be very carefully moved forward until it's clear of the intermediate module. The alignment pins can now be removed and stored. The 2 halves of the curvic coupling must be protected against accidental damage by fitting protective covers to the curvic coupling on the back of the fan module and the front of the low-pressure stub shaft. The fan module can now be transferred to the storage and transportation stand. Prepare the storage stand by extending the protective fencing. Remove the wing nut and clamp plate. The fan module must be rotated to the horizontal position using 2 hoists. Note the use of the quick release pin, which provides additional stability. The fan is then lowered onto the storage stand. The sling is removed and the fan is secured in the storage stand using the clamp plate and the wing nut. That completes the removal of the fan, Module 3.1. If the module is not being refitted immediately, fit the protective cover to the front of the intermediate casing. Replacement of the fan module is a reversal of the removal procedure. Remove the protective cover. Assemble the lifting sling, ensuring that the center of gravity of the sling is set correctly. Lift the fan and rotate it to the vertical position. Remove the protective covers from the fan disc curvic coupling and the low-pressure stub shaft curvic coupling. Before assembly, the two halves of the curvic coupling must be thoroughly cleaned. Then, carefully inspect for damage. Any damage, however slight, could cause vibration and must be repaired in accordance with the instructions in the engine manual. Inspect the 24 curvic coupling bolts for serviceability. Lightly lubricate the thread and mating faces with clean engine oil. Carry out an inspection of the area behind the fan. When all the interface checks have been completed satisfactorily, the fan module can be installed. Use the alignment pins to ensure correct alignment of the two halves of the curvic coupling during assembly. Screw them into the stub shaft curvic coupling until the R identification line is in line with the front face of the curvic teeth. The fan module must only be fitted to the stub shaft in one position, which is identified by correlation marks on the fan disc and the low-pressure stub shaft. It's necessary at this stage to transfer the correlation mark on the fan disc to a more visible position. This will aid the fitting of the fan module. The fan is moved carefully into position until the two halves of the curvic coupling are about 6 inches apart. The correlation marks are aligned by rotating the stub shaft, or if necessary, by turning the low-pressure turbine. The fan module is now moved carefully rearwards until the 3 alignment pins engage with the correct holes in the fan module curvic coupling. This ensures precise alignment of the two halves, enabling the curvic coupling to be fully engaged. It's now retained in position by fitting 4 bolts, equally spaced. The bolts are tightened lightly in sequence and torque loaded to 500 pounds-inches or 42 pounds-feet. With the fan module secured, the hoisting equipment can now be safely removed. Fit the hub protector and remove the 3 alignment pins. Fit the remainder of the curvic coupling bolts and lightly tighten. After the location ring has been fitted, the bolts are torque loaded in sequence. The torque loading procedure is repeated, but this time the bolts are tightened to their final torque loading of 1,000 pounds-inches or 84 pounds-feet. A final check of correct torque loading is carried out on each bolt. And then the location ring is removed. The hub protector is also removed and the spinner and fairing refitted. The tests required after a fan module change are detailed in the Engine Maintenance Manual, Chapter 71, and must be completed before the engine is returned to service. This part of the program demonstrates the removal and replacement of the low-pressure turbine, Module 50. It will show the LP turbine removal and replacement with the fan module removed. But, if necessary, the LP turbine module can be removed and replaced with the fan module installed. Before the LP turbine can be removed, it will be necessary to remove some external features, such as the 4 number 2 nozzle guide vane cooling tubes, the active clearance control valve assembly, the high-pressure turbine active clearance control manifold, the buffer air cooler and associated pipework, and various electrical harness and air and oil systems tubing. Refer to the engine manual for full details. The next step is to ensure the engine is supported adequately whilst allowing the LP turbine to be removed. Position the cradle pedestal underneath the rear of the diffuser casing, ensuring the saddle is the correct way round. Then support the engine weight. Now the 2 rear support posts can be removed. The rear support trunnions can be removed from the turbine exhaust case. This completes the initial engine preparation and allows full access to the LP turbine module. And the tooling to remove the module can now be fitted. The first step is to remove the number 5 bearing compartment heat shield. And then, using the extractor, remove the compartment cover. Next, remove the LP turbine shaft plug retaining ring. Locate the extractor and remove the shaft plug. Now the lifting tools can be fitted. The expanding retainer goes in first. Push it into the rear of the LP turbine shaft as far as it will go. Then turn the end knob anti-clockwise to clamp the retainer firmly in position. Now fit the protective cover by sliding it over the expanding retainer. Hand tighten and then separate the 2 large nuts on the expanding retainer. The handling fixture can now be fitted. Lift the fixture with the 2 cable sling attached to the 2 rear trunnions and align with the rear of the LP turbine. Carefully push the handling fixture over the expanding retainer until it contacts the turbine exhaust case rear flange. Then lift into the correct position. Now secure the fixture to the LP turbine rear flange with the screws provided. Then the 2 nuts on the expanding retainer are tightened, both sides of the fixture. Finally, remove the 2 cable sling and reattach it to the handling fixture front trunnions. Ensure the module weight is correctly supported. With the lifting equipment now securely fitted, we can commence to disconnect the module from the rest of the engine. The front lock nut is removed first, as follows. Release the internal retaining ring and remove it. Then take out the locking cap. Now the tooling to remove the front lock nut can be installed. The first item to be fitted is the tool support, here without the fan module installed. The stub shaft curvic protector is removed, and support A is secured on the curvic face with the 4 bolts. If the fan module is still installed, then support B is required and is fitted to the front retaining ring. Now fit the drive bar through the support. And engage the end cap into the lock nut. Insert the immobilizer into the drive bar. Engage its end cap into the LP turbine shaft and secure to the LP turbine shaft with the spring-loaded center thumb nut. The next step is to fit the hydraulic mechanical wrench. Hoist it into position and slide it onto the drive bar splines. Fit the spring, then the anchor plate, and secure with the clamp disc. Once the tooling is fitted, connect the air-driven hydraulic pump to an air supply and switch on. Set the ratchet in the mechanical wrench to unscrew the front nut, that is, anti-clockwise when looking at the front of the engine. Operate the control valve to release the nut. When the nut is released, the tooling can be removed in the reverse order and the curvic protector refitted. The front nut can be extracted by hand. Now remove the 100 nuts and bolts and 7 brackets from the LP turbine model front flange. Next, fit the hydraulic pusher-puller. Fit the guide into the front of the fan stub shaft, ensuring that it's properly located in the stub shaft lugs, and the 4 pins are secured with the retaining cap screws. Slide the plunger rearwards and screw into the thread in the LP turbine shaft. Fit the hydraulic fixture onto the guide. Secure with the 6 cap screws and fit the guide pin through the fixture into the plunger. Assemble the hydraulic actuator onto the fixture, ensuring the piston is to the rear. Connect the hand pump. Operate the hand pump to push the LP turbine rearwards about an inch. This action forces apart the 0.005 of an inch interference fit between the LP turbine shaft and fan stub shaft. Now the hydraulic hand pump, actuator and push-put can be removed in the reverse order. The next operation is to fit the guide bar and the heater or the guide support. But first, have a look at why these are necessary. If the LP turbine is removed as it is, there's a very great danger of the LP turbine shaft contacting the inside of the HP compressor discs, causing unacceptable and extensive damage. To prevent this happening, the guide bar is fitted to the front of the LP turbine shaft and is located at the front either by the heater, which is used as a guide bush only at this stage, or the guide support. In this program, the heater is used. Also, to prevent damage at the rear of the HP turbine, a series of guide sleeves are fitted. Now, the LP turbine module can be removed without causing any internal damage. First, engage the rear half of the guide bar into the threads inside the front end of the LP turbine shaft. Then, slide on the heater and locate on the lugs inside the fan stub shaft front end. Secure with the 4 locking pins and cap screws. Now, attach the front half of the guide bar to the rear half. It's now possible to pull the LP turbine module out of the engine, taking care that no fouls occur. Move the module rearwards about 20 inches. At this stage, it will be necessary to fit the guide sleeves to the rear of the high-pressure turbine. Sleeves A are assembled and fitted first. Then sleeves B are assembled and fitted inside sleeves A. Both sets of sleeves are secured by a large locking collar. Next, fit the 2 support plates to the LP turbine front flange and secure each plate with 7 bolts. Now, gently move the LP turbine module rearwards, making sure there's no hard contact between the LP turbine shaft and the sleeves B. If contact occurs, it may be necessary to adjust the height of the module. Continue to move the LP turbine rearwards as far as it will go. At this point, it will be necessary to remove sleeves B. Replace with the spacer ring halves, along with the locking collar, which is refitted. This is the largest diameter of the LP turbine shaft and will be supported by sleeves A. Continue to move the module rearwards until the LP turbine shaft is clear of the LP turbine and the rear end of the guide bar is exposed. The guide bar has a smaller diameter than the LP turbine shaft and it will have to be supported. So remove the spacer ring halves, assemble and fit sleeves C inside sleeves A, and refit the locking collar. Now the module can be separated from the guide bar. Holding the shaft to keep the module stable, position the module above the horizontal stand and lower to just above stand height. Screw the front support attachment to the inner and outer threads on the LP turbine shaft. Carefully lower the module into the stand, making sure it's properly located on the front flange. Then locate and secure the LP turbine shaft front end. And secure the front flange with the cap screws. The two-cable sling can now be removed. That completes the removal of the LP turbine, Module 50. If the module is to be replaced with another, remove the tooling ready to fit the replacement module. Also, if necessary, the high-pressure system, Module 40, could be removed at this stage. Replacement of the low-pressure turbine, Module 50, is almost a reversal of the removal procedure. First, carry out the interface checks according to the engine manual instructions. If the LP turbine module, the HP system module, or any major part of those modules has been replaced, it will be necessary to calculate a new adjusting ring thickness. Refer to the engine manual for details. The spacer fits on the front of its LP turbine shaft and ensures that the LP turbine rotor setting clearance is correct. The ring is supplied in one size and has to be machined to the dimension calculated and then fitted to the shaft after the module has been removed from the stand. With the checks completed, the replacement procedure can commence. Having removed the measuring equipment, it will now be necessary to refit the guide bar. Attach the 2-cable sling to the front trunnions on the handling fixture. Release the module from the horizontal stand and lift it clear, always keeping hold of the front end of the LP turbine shaft. Then remove the support attachment. If necessary, change the spacer ring at this point. Now, align the LP turbine shaft with the guide bar. Engage the guide bar thread into the shaft. During the reinstallation of the LP turbine to the engine, the support sleeves will have to be changed in the reverse order to module removal. So, remove sleeves C, fit the spacer ring, and refit the locking collar. Now, gently push the module forwards on the hoist approximately 12 to 15 inches. Remove the spacer ring and fit sleeves B. Continue to move the module forwards, watching for hard contact between the shaft and sleeves B, until the two flanges are about 20 inches apart. At this point, the heater control box is connected to the heater and a power source. The correct procedure and settings of the heater control box can be found in the engine manual. Do make sure that the heater element is fully immersed in the fan stub shaft. Now, switch on the power to the heater element. Whilst the heater is bringing the stub shaft splines up to the required temperature, the locking collar and sleeves B and A can be removed. Also, the two support plates between the LP turbine module front flange and shaft can be removed. When the stub shaft spline area is up to the specified temperature, it will be indicated on the heater control box. Switch off the control box and disconnect all the wiring. Pull the heater element out of the stub shaft spline area, then push the module forwards until there's a gap of about ½ inch between the flange faces. Make sure that the splines on the turbine shaft engage with the splines in the fan stub shaft. At the front of the engine, remove the front section of the guide bar and the heater. And then the rear section of the guide bar. Warning: these three items could be very hot. Use heat-resistant protective gloves and place items in a safe area until cold. Now, fit the hydraulic pusher-puller in the same sequence as during the removal, except for the hydraulic actuator. This is fitted with the piston to the front, and the large nut is fitted. Connect the hand pump and apply pressure until the gap at the flanges closes up. Release the pressure. And when the piston is fully retracted, disconnect the actuator and remove it. And then remove the hydraulic pusher-puller. The next step is to refit the front lock nut and torque tighten to the specified torque value. First, loosen the two lock nuts on the expanding retainer either side of the handling fixture at the rear of the engine. Lubricate the front lock nut thread and mating face with clean engine oil, and install onto the LP turbine shaft thread. Refit the torque tightening tools exactly the same as the module removal sequence. Connect up the air supply and switch on. Set the ratchet to tighten the nut, that is, clockwise. Tighten the nut to the specified torque value. It's important to use the correct technique. This can be found in the engine manual. Once the torque tightening has been completed, the torque tooling can be removed and the curvic protector refitted. Next, fit the locking cap back into position and secure with the internal retaining ring. Now the flange can be bolted up. First, fit the 16 special nuts and bolts next to the number 2 nozzle guide vane cooling air bosses, and fit the 7 brackets in the correct positions. Fit the remainder of the 100 nuts and bolts and torque tighten to the correct value in the correct sequence. This information can be found in the Standard Practices section of the engine manual. Now, the handling fixture can be removed from the rear of the engine. Move the 2-cable sling back to the 2 rear trunnions. Remove the cap screws remove the handling fixture, remove the protective cover, and then the expanding retainer. The next stage is to check that the correct size of spacer ring is installed and that the module has been refitted properly. That is, to measure the distance from the LP turbine module rear flange to the rearmost face of the LP turbine shaft, and use this measurement with other recorded information to calculate the correct setting dimension. The engine manual gives full details of this procedure. If all is satisfactory, refit the LP turbine shaft plug and retaining ring. And refit the number 5 bearing compartment cover. It's good practice to use the extractor for refitting these two components. It will ensure correct alignment. Refit the heat shield and secure with the 12 bolts. Torque tightening to the correct torque loading. Finally, refit the rear trunnions and support posts to support the weight of the engine. And remove the cradle pedestal. That completes the low-pressure turbine module removal and refitting. All that remains is to refit the core engine accessories and carry out the required engine tests, as specified in the maintenance manual. This part of the program will demonstrate the removal and installation of the high-pressure system, Module 40. Before this module can be removed, the low-pressure turbine, Module 50, will have to be removed, as described earlier in this program. After the LP turbine module is secured in its stand, the guide bar is left in the engine, supported by the heater at the front and the sleeves A and C at the rear. So, first of all, this tooling will have to be removed. Carefully pull out the guide bar from the rear, making sure that no internal contact is made. Remove the sleeves A and C from the rear of the HP turbine. Strip and return the sleeves to the box. Remove the heater from the fan stub shaft and return it to its box. Now, the lifting equipment can be fitted to the module, but before this is fitted, there's a certain amount of component removal required, which is best done at this stage, such as the number 1 and 2 igniter boxes and mount features, the booster stage bleed valve master and slave actuators and their respective mount frames, the active clearance control actuator, the variable stator vane actuator, the HP compressor handling bleed valves, and various tubes and electrical harnesses. This improves accessibility to the module front flange and makes room for the front trunnions. All of this is covered in detail in the engine manual. Lift the remove and install fixture by the lifting eye. In the middle of this fixture is a center ring, which is secured by a series of hand knobs. Slacken off the hand knobs and push the center ring rearwards. Now, align the fixture with the module rear flange. Secure it with the split ring. And the nuts and bolts. Next, push the center ring forwards until it contacts the rear face of the rear turbine disc. The tie rod adapter has to be fitted next. Flatten the puck and then insert the adapter into the HP turbine shaft. Make sure the puck is seated correctly, as illustrated here. Then, keeping hold of the tie rod shaft, slide on the adapter plate. Locate the plate with the screws to the rear face of the center ring. Put on the lock nut. And tighten. Then tighten all the hand knobs. With the remove and install fixture secured, remove the crane from the lifting eye. Fit the front trunnions to the front of the flange, which is at the rear of the compressor split case section, both sides of the module. Secure with the nuts and bolts provided. The next step is to ensure that the intermediate module, 3.2, will be properly supported after the HP system removal. To do this, fit the trunnion assembly to the front flange of the intermediate module. Support it with support posts positioned on both sides. Now, the HP compressor shaft support rods are fitted. These are required to support the front of the compressor shaft. When it's separated at the curvic coupling, just behind the number 3 bearing. Without the supports, damage to the blade tips and seals could occur. These supports are fitted just behind the number 3 stator vanes, at 3 equally spaced positions. Remove the blanking plugs. Before the supports can be fitted, the variable stator vanes must be moved to the low speed condition. And then rig pinned to prevent possible movement. This will ensure sufficient clearance behind the stage 3 stator vanes to allow the supports to be inserted. Fit the support with the blade side towards the rear of the engine. Insert through the access hole. Tighten up the 2 bolts and turn the adjusting thumb screw until the blade contacts the shaft, tightening to finger tight only. The fitting procedure is the same for all 3 support rods. Now the lifting sling can be put into position. With the sling suspended by the crane, turn the adjustment wheel until the sling is balanced. Carefully move the sling into position. Connect the cables to the outer trunnions at all 4 lift points and adjust the height of the sling to take up the cable slack. Turn the adjustment handle to find the correct center of gravity position. Now, with the HP module properly supported, it can be separated from the intermediate module. First, at the shaft curvic coupling, unscrew the 20 captive curvic bolts. Remember to fit the hub protector if the fan is installed. And then, at the HP compressor front flange, remove the 38 nuts and bolts. And then the 4 remaining bolts with the lock plates and alignment pins. Now remove the cradle pedestal. Separate the HP system module away from the intermediate module. Position the module over the 2 support posts and the cradle pedestal. Lower the module onto the supports, ensuring that it's correctly located on the inner trunnions. Change the center of gravity on the sling. Disconnect the cables from the trunnions and move the sling away. Now, fit the correct curvic protection to the front of the HP system module and to the stub shaft of the intermediate module. And that completes the removal of the high pressure system, Module 40. Replacement of the high pressure system, Module 40, is a reversal of the removal procedure with one exception. On replacement, we have to make sure that the HP shaft curvic faces are correctly aligned. After the curvic protection has been removed, the module interface inspection must be carried out. This is covered in detail in the engine manual. It will ensure that the mating faces are clean and free from damage. Once this has been completed satisfactorily, carry out the curvic alignment. Loosen the lock screw on the alignment tool and install to the front flange at top dead center, turning the alignment plate until the location pins can be inserted into 2 of the 4 curvic location dowel holes in the curvic coupling, and tighten the lock screw. Then fit the tool to the intermediate module flange, again at top dead center, with the lock screw towards the engine front. This time, turn the HP compressor stub shaft to align the curvic location dowels with the alignment plate holes. Here, the stub shaft is rotated by simple direct hands-on force. But another method, if necessary, is to turn the shaft through the gearbox hand turning point between the dedicated alternator and the starter motor on the gearbox front face. This method is particularly useful when the accessory load on the gearbox is quite high. Now, the module can be refitted without causing damage to the curvic coupling. So, refit the sling, alter the center of gravity, lift the module and clear the support out of the way. Align the module center line and gently bring the modules together. Final module alignment can be achieved by viewing down the fan stub shaft. Ensure that all the location dowels in the curvic and in the flange locate into their related holes in the HP system module. Refit the 4 small pins and secure with the lock plates and nuts and bolts. Gradually tighten these bolts in sequence to bring the 2 modules together, and then tighten to the specified torque value. Fit the remaining nuts and bolts and torque tighten in the correct sequence. When the flange is completed, reposition the cradle pedestal and support the weight of the module. Now release the tension of the lift sling cables, alter the sling center of gravity, and remove the sling from the module. Engage the curvic bolts with a long wrench and tighten all of them to finger tight. Fit the indexing unit to the fan stub shaft lugs. Using the torque spanner and torque wrench, tighten the bolts in the correct sequence to the correct torque value. Refer to the engine manual for the detailed procedure. When finished, remove the torque spanner and indexing unit. Once the flange and the curvic coupling have been torque tightened, then all the tooling can be removed. So, remove the 3 support rods and refit the blanks. Remove the variable stator vane rig pin. Remove the front trunnions and refit the flange bolts. And then remove the tie rod adapter, the shaft, and puck. Finally, remove the lifting fixture. You'll see that there's no requirement to carry out HP turbine drop checks when installing the high-pressure system module. This is done when it's assembled, not when it's installed into the engine. The replacement of the high-pressure system module is now virtually complete. All that remains is to refit the low-pressure turbine, module 50, as described earlier, refit all the core engine accessories and components, and carry out any test as required by the engine manual. Part 4 of this program will demonstrate the removal and installation of the external gearbox, Module 60. The gearbox can be removed or replaced onto the intermediate module with or without all the other modules installed. In this program, the core engine modules and the fan are removed. Also, the removal of the gearbox can be carried out with all the accessories installed or removed. Here, to gain better access to the gearbox mounts, most of the accessories have been removed. The engine manual covers the removal of the accessories in detail. This description starts at the point where all the necessary tube and harness disconnections have been completed, and all the oil has been drained from the gearbox and the oil tank. The first step will be to fit the two handling pins. These are simply screwed into the ground handling bosses on the bottom of the gearbox. Connect the hydraulic hand pump to the hydraulic jack . Then put the gearbox adapter onto the circular plate of the hydraulic jack. Now maneuver the jack into position under the gearbox. Operate the hand pump to lift the gearbox adapter up to the gearbox, making sure that the handling pins pass through the rubber shock absorber bushes on the gearbox adapter. Then fit the safety pins through the handling pins. Ensure that the angle gearbox support is contacting the base of the angle gearbox. Fit the locking fixtures to the lugs on top of the angle gearbox and tighten the hand wheels. Any slight misalignment between the gearbox adapter and the jack circular plate can be corrected by turning the adjusting hand wheels on the jack. Lift the hydraulic jack slightly to remove the gearbox weight off the mount links. The next stage is to remove the bolts from the 4 gearbox mount features. That is, the front right-hand mount, the front center mount, the front left-hand mount, and the angle gearbox or rear mount. With all the mounts disconnected, gradually lower the gearbox and at the same time ensure that the angle gearbox separates from the tower shaft lower end seal, then fully lower the gearbox. If the tower shaft is pulled down with the gearbox, disconnect it and push it back up into the intermediate module. Fit the protector on the top of the angle gearbox and fit the tower shaft retainer to the bottom of the tower shaft tube. Carefully pull the gearbox forward, making sure that no fouls occur. Once free of the intermediate case, lift the gearbox on the jack. Position the gearbox over the storage stand and lower into position. Fit the safety pin under the rear of the gearbox adapter. Lower the hydraulic jack and pull it out of the way. If the gearbox module is to be replaced with another, then any necessary transfer of components can be done at this time. For instance, the gearbox mount brackets are part of the intermediate module and would need transferring to the replacement gearbox. Extractors are available to remove them. And then they can be refitted onto the replacement gearbox. And that completes the removal of the external gearbox. Replacement of the external gearbox, module 60, is a straightforward reversal of the removal procedure. First, as with all the other module installation procedures, carry out the module interface checks as specified in the engine manual. If everything is satisfactory, then the installation can proceed. Release the safety pin at the rear of the gearbox adapter. Locate the jack and lift the module clear of the stand. Lower the module and maneuver into position under the intermediate module. Be careful not to cause any fouling. Now remove the tower shaft retainer and the old seal. Lubricate a new seal with clean engine oil and fit into the seal groove. Remove the protective cover from the angle gearbox and lift the gearbox until the radial drive on the angle gearbox is aligned with the tower shaft. Make sure that the tower shaft splines are aligned with the radial drive splines as follows. Turn the HP compressor stub shaft by hand. Or turn the HP turbine by hand if the high-pressure system is installed. Or, if the LP turbine is installed, then the gearbox hand crank point should be used. Once these splines are aligned, the gearbox can be lifted into full engagement. And all the gearbox mount bolts can be inserted and torque tightened. Now the tooling can be removed. Remove the safety pins from the handling pins. Release the two locking rods from the angle gearbox and stow onto the gearbox adapter. Now lower the hydraulic jack and pull it clear of the engine. Finally, remove the handling pins from the base of the gearbox and, if necessary, refit the hand crank cover. That completes the removal and installation of the external gearbox, Module 60. All that remains is to reconnect all the accessories, tubes, wiring looms, and replenish the oil. Then carry out the required checks as specified in the engine manual. The removal and installation of the intermediate module, 3.2, is achieved by the removal of all the other modules. The fan, module 3.1, the low-pressure turbine, module 5.0, the high-pressure system, module 4.0, the external gearbox, module 6.0. The module is then stripped of all its non-modular parts and changed. And all of this procedure is then reversed to return the engine into service. Each method demonstrated in this program is in fact only one of numerous ways in which whole modules or partial modules can be removed and reinstalled. The facilities planning manual illustrates all the possible options. and also gives the relevant task numbers, which will cross-refer to the detailed information contained in the engine and maintenance manuals.